Hey, all, Baruch Levy, be here from the Defiant Spirit. Man, I'm doing two in a row because I just realized I just did the Enneagram 6 and I did it last time. So I'm going to do the Enneagram 7. So you have two options for Enneagram 6, the loyalist, to figure out if it's your type. But for this one, I'm only going to do one, and that is Enneagram 7. Enneagram 7 is the enthusiast, sometimes called the epicure, the optimist, the visionary, the seeker. It's always the same energy. Doesn't matter what you call it. I say it every time because people will get all confused. In the Enneagram world and system, we tend to just default to the number because the number is really what this is about. Seven is, I don't usually do this, but in Kabbalah mysticism, which there's a lot of overlap between this and Catholic mysticism and Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalistic idea of seven is creation, is a creative capacity. And so seven, well, we know that because it's translated into our world into the 7 days of the week. Seven is a prominent number in creative narratives. Anyways, seven is a creative genius. Sevens are, they just have a creativity and a vitality really like no other type. Fours can be incredibly creative, but it's a much deeper, introspective, translating darkness into light kind of a creation. Nines can be creative, but it's more of, can I tap into the imagination, right, and share it. Seven's more of a palpable energy of moving into the unknown and creating from nothing into something. So sevens are forward thinkers. They're future oriented. Eights, I'm an eight challenger, or at least I react like an eight. Threes, the achiever, and seven, the enthusiast, are all forward facing. They're all future oriented, so they don't tend to naturally deal well in the present moment, which we'll get back to. They tend not to ruminate upon the past. They're too busy, like sevens above all else, rushing, running, moving fast into the future. If you go fast, if you've been accused of ADHD and you haven't been diagnosed with it, if you know that squirrel joke, right, from I think it was the movie Up, was it, when the dogs see the squirrel, right? Squirrel. That's the seven thing. Sevens have the monkey mind. Look, you have too many awesome, amazing thoughts for any one human being. And so you can't process them fast enough. And if you're not standing guard and defying your number, you'll jump. Squirrel, 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 shiny object. When I hear a seven coming to me to work with me, if they're not in a healthy, responsive place, it doesn't usually stick, doesn't work. I say this quite often. I really don't work with sevens until they've had a divorce, or their parent has died, or they've gone through a professional trauma turmoil. Because until then, they can't stop looking at the future. Those things bring you to a screeching halt. And sevens have a very hard time being present, dealing with reality, dealing with responsibilities, and above all else, dealing with suffering. Look, it's the yin yang. They are enthusiastic, right? Joy, fun, good times. So if they're not careful, they'll run from the bad times, run from the not so fun, run from the things that ground us in the here and now. Sevens can grow up, sevens can do the work, and sevens can become real. We call the seven sometimes the Peter Pan syndrome, the boy who never wanted to grow up. And that whole movie is really about Peter Pan having to grow up while everybody else, or at least Wendy, the real person, is growing up. And he's with the Lost Boys living in Never Never Land. And his work is around owning his shadow. There's a scene in the movie where he's chasing his shadow. He's wrestling his shadow in Wendy's bedroom, and she helps him sew it on. And so the work of a seven is, can you sew on your shadow and experience all that life has to offer, not just half, not just the fun half, not just the happy half, but the whole, not the half. So sevens work happens to be around standing present, being present, taking responsibility for their lives, execution. So I worked in the tech world or the startup world for quite some time. And here's what I saw over and over again. So many people came to me with good ideas. We were funding different entrepreneurial startups, and there's no shortage of good ideas. And usually they're coming from sevens. The problem isn't the good idea. The problem is the execution of the good idea. somebody who can execute on a good idea. Now that's a powerful combination. And that's really where sevens can get to. And they can get there. I mean, you look at like Sir Richard Branson, a seven, probably one of the most successful entrepreneurs in human history, started hundreds of companies, but he also can't be running hundreds of companies, but he was smart enough to know that they needed somebody to run them, and it wasn't him. Tends to be that if you're good at a startup, you're not good at a scale up. And that's really a seven thing. So you got to find people who are not CEOs, but COOs, who are not visionaries, but who are, more pragmatic. Sevens need to do that work. Now, sevens can become the most inspiring of all types when they do this work. For example, we have a modern day, real life example of a what I would call responsible, able to respond Enneagram 7 in Vladimir Zelensky. Now, Zelensky, if you don't know, was an absolute utter joke. Literally, he was a comedian. He was sort of a Jim Carrey like figure in Ukraine. He had his own TV show. He was a comedian. I've watched a couple of YouTube things where it was ridiculous. That's not the Zelensky I know. That's not the Zelensky, politics aside, that the world has come to respect, if not agree with. And this is a man who grew up, took responsibility, wrestled the shadow, owned his shadow, and now is leading an entire country in their fight for liberty and freedom. So the bottom line is sevens can do this work. JFK was another one. JFK was a playboy. JFK, had some real shadows, but he, in the end, rose to the occasion, stood up, and became synonymous with leadership. So the bottom line is sevens can do this work. When they do this work, they are the most inspiring type, in my opinion. I would love to be a healthy, responsible seven. That's how you know you're a seven. If you want to learn more about the seven, jump over to defiantspirit.org. If you would like to talk about discovering your number on a coaching call, we could do that. Reach out to me, be@defiantspirit.org. And stay tuned because I have a complimentary offering coming called Discover Your Number, where you can go through all the numbers and discover your number, your loved one's numbers. You don't need me. You don't need a test. I'm happy to give you a test, but you don't need one. You just need to dig in to do the work and to ask yourself, right, is this my number? And if it is, then learn how to defy your number and live your spirit. I will talk to you in the next video.